All right, so my first question is, are your students ready? Okay, I wanted you to picture something, and I know we're not all animal scientists here, so picture some sort of big high stakes scenario. For me and my students, as they progress through the animal science program here at Tarleton State, we get phone calls or text messages at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, a ewe is in labor. Okay, so that's a female sheep is in labor. Progression has stalled. So we see like maybe some feet out, but not a whole lot. So she's just straining really, really badly. There's no vet to call immediately, and the closest help is about 20 minutes away, and that's a faculty member or the farm staff. Okay. So what would you be able to do as a student? What do you feel like you'd be confident to do? For help. Ask for help. Okay. So maybe text some TAs, some GAs maybe in the class, or the group me where the instructor is, so ask for help. Okay. What else? Okay. The reason why I start here is because we always have this question. These are the exact type of situations that students are going to be in when they graduate. So whether it's something for them, if you're in the health sciences field, how can they respond to a harder conversation, or how can they assess the situation until the next steps can occur? Overall, as faculty members and staff, we expect our students to be ready, but do we really give them an opportunity to kind of test the waters before we send them out past graduation? And that's what I really try to do and instill in my students here, not to just recall the information, not the details, but can you do it? Can you put it into practice? Oh, that moves me into experiential learning. And so why do I do it? One of the challenges we see across higher education is that students can understand concepts in the lecture hall, and they can show what they know on their exams, but struggle to apply them when we go to real world scenarios or real world situations. Experiential learning helps them bridge that gap between theory, so what we talk about in lectures or what we talk about in labs, into actual practice. It helps build that confidence in students and competence, so that way when they get to the real world, they can be ready for those career questions, those career responses that we expect of our students, and specifically more so in the animal science industry. Okay, so what exactly is experiential learning? I wish I could hide this.
You can just more and then hide floating.
There we go. There we go. I couldn't see it initially. Okay. So what exactly is experiential learning? So this is the framework. It's a cycle. You always improve upon this. And so technically what we typically think about when we talk about experiential learning, we think about 3 key components, which is experience, reflection, and application. So most of the time, students get a lot of this reflection and this thinking in the lecture hall, but what they miss out on is this doing. So actively experimenting what works, what doesn't, in a more safe zone before we jump again into the real world. And then we can then have them start thinking about those continual feelings. How did I feel in that situation? Okay. Initially, I got that phone call. I'm stressed. Okay. We talk about birth, we talk about partition, we talk about what it should look like, but what if it doesn't look the correct way? Okay. And so utilizing this is going to help us understand that it's not just about doing. Okay. Yes, doing is there, but the cycle doesn't stop with the doing. Okay. It's about doing, thinking about it, and then applying that learning to move forward in that progression. And so this is how I set up my classes and the scaffolding that I do to teach this. So I integrate it into 2 specific courses. These are heavy student courses. So someone asked me this semester how many students I have in my animal science, physiology, reproduction. I have 183 students, and that's a light semester. And so it's split up over 2 lecture sections and 5 lab sections. Okay, so you can anticipate lectures halls being pretty big. Students don't want to ask questions. It's in the lab settings where they do ask questions, and we do challenge them to do hands-on every single time that we meet together. So I cover concepts that maybe we struggle with understanding from the textbook or from a 2D slide or some pictures. And then I carry on some of that information into my sheep and goat production course. So not all of our animal science students have to take this course. They get to choose 2 different production courses. So sheep and goat production is one of the options that they can do. And they take it after they get their foundational knowledge. So here we take that foundational information and put it into practice as much as possible, or as much as the farm would allow us to do. Okay. So we build, we start building. This class is taught, reproductive physiology is taught both in the spring and the fall. In particular, when we're talking about small ruminants, so sheep and goats, little fun fact about them, they can only naturally get bred in the fall. So our fall semester is a little bit more hands-on because we can do things like have some breeding checks. So let's talk through what we actually do in this class, so that way we can get a little bit better understanding of the pictures that I have here on the slide. Okay, so over here, this is an iPad, but we have a program on it called iSperm. And what we're able to do is take a semen collection from one of our animals on the farm, so one of our males, and we're able to look at the sperm cells underneath. So this area right here is looking at all the different sperm cells there. Okay, and so when I do this, I'm teaching students about, okay, the gametes have to be produced, the gametes have to be released, and there's a certain quantity that needs to be there for fertilization to be successful. So we're testing this male before we throw him out into the pasture with the female. Okay, can he do his job? So they get to actually do this. They get to get hands-on. They look at the semen analysis, and we can see the concentration. We can see how much are moving forwardly. We say that progressive modal, and we can see what the abnormalities are. So can the sperm make it there, yes or no? So we take that information, then we make a decision. Can we put this male out in the pasture with a female? And most of the time it's yes. Why would we have a male that can't do the breeding? And so then the next step is, okay, how do we quantitate, how do we see these reproductive behaviors? So we paint with some oil-based paint. This one in the middle, this is the male. And so then in the fall semester, my students went out for 6 weeks and looked in the pastures. Okay, and when they were doing that, they were checking the ewes or the females to see if their rear ends changed color. Okay, so if they marked them, if the ram is colored on its chest and the rear ends are changing color, that's one of the main ways that producers can say, okay, yeah, that female was bred. Okay, not necessarily successful, but was bred. So then a few months later, towards the end of the semester, we can ultrasound. And so my students now get the opportunity, okay, we've talked about reproductive behaviors. We've talked about how estrus synchronization occurs. Now let's see if it was successful. And so they get opportunities to practice ultrasonography on our small ruminants, so sheep and goats here. So that's my repro class. Makes sense. Okay. So they take that information, and if they take that foundation that they built upon, now they're going to apply some knowledge. So in my sheep and goat class, again, this is a production level course. So juniors and seniors about ready to graduate. They get to pick what species they want to do. My class, obviously, sheep and goats. So for the months from February all the way to the first week of April, they're in charge of the ewes, which are the female sheep, and the does, which are the female goats that are pregnant. So we do pen watches, we check them, we help with partition or the act of giving birth. They ear tag, they dock, they do vaccinations. They're in charge of all of it. So prior to this, we take some baseline understanding. So I give them a pre-survey. What do you feel confident in? And why do you want to take this class? Okay. Small ruminants, for most students, if they have no animal experience, this is where they feel the most comfortable. They're small. They're not going to overrun me. They might have a little bit of bad attitude, but we can work with it. Okay. They're not going to hurt me. So I get a lot of students who maybe have never touched livestock since their first general animal science class. And so they're pushed out of their comfort zone first. Okay, I get students that want to go to vet school, but maybe not have a whole lot of hours. So now they're going to pick up every single opportunity to do lamb checks and kid checks and to help out with vaccines and sign up for all of spring break to check on everybody, because we could have students that do that this year. Okay, we did vaccinations, we've done production records, and so my students, the concepts that we talk specifically in sheep and goat, now we can apply it. Now they can go through and they can say, this is what makes sense to us. And so I have a couple students here. Here they're docking tails on this little Dorper U, I'm going to say. Okay, and so this is a common production practice. Down here, we've got a group of students helping this first little goat, or this is a Dorper, so again, a little lamb nurse out and get that first milk that they need. So these are, again, things that they would see in real life, but if they've never been around production agriculture, they've never had that experience. So we get to provide that experience with them to apply the knowledge base that they have. Okay, so what makes this a powerful area is that it's in real time, sometimes things are unpredictable. Okay, the number of times that I've gotten group me messages, because I don't give out my cell phone number, but I group me messages, hey, this is happening, what do I do? Now, granted, I live about 5 minutes from the campus ag center, so I could be there, but we give them scaffolding, okay? We watch webinars. We go out there and we work in a group and lab. So that way, when I get the phone call at 7:30 at night from my graduate student, hey, we've tried everything, now can you come help? They can do it, but they're learning these things in real life, okay, and in real time. Students are making those decisions, they're responding to those challenges that we face, okay, but in a soft area where they can develop those confidence skills. See, and so there's more of a level of authenticity that's driving their education instead of just chasing that grade, chasing that A or chasing that B. They can confidently say, like, I'm actually learning something instead of just chasing grades. And that's what I can really appreciate about the students that I have the opportunity to interact with. Okay, so we're gonna pause just for a moment. I've been yapping up here quite a bit. So where could you incorporate real world applications into your course? Okay, some of us are faculty members, some of us work with faculty, but where are some areas that you could develop this?
Well, since I'm faculty, I'll say, so mine's legal studies.
Yeah.
And we do mock trials, so that they have that application. We don't do them as much as we probably should, but it's that same concept of trying to simulate the courtroom before they actually wind up in the courtroom, so they're less scared of it when they arrive.
Yeah, so providing those opportunities, again, safe to develop confidence. And maybe through that mock trial, they were like, okay, yeah, I like this specific aspect, so they can pursue it more than just saying, oh, I want to go into criminal justice and do whatever I need to do, right? Anybody else? And a lot of degrees have some hands-on stuff, but as much opportunity as you can would be really important. Okay. Like we said, it doesn't have to be livestock, but it can be simulations, case studies, field work, or applied projects. Okay. So how did I develop mine? Well, I looked at my student learning outcomes. So as a result of these experiences, students develop these technical skills in production and management. Okay, again, a lot of them just sit in class. They take notes and they don't know how to apply it. So putting them in this situation where you are in charge of this for the next 3.5 months puts the ownership back on them. Okay, and they, again, get that experience and they're able to talk about it. Okay, it helps develop those problem-solving skills that we see on all job applications, regardless of what industry you're going into. Okay, my students are getting ready. This week they present their capstone. So they selected a breed that they're supposed to do in sheep and goat, and I have them develop a business plan. Okay, show of hands, how many of you have ever eaten goat meat or lamb meat? Okay, what about dairy products from small ruminants? Okay, a few. But again, if you look at the whole population, not a lot of people do that. Okay, it's a colder day. How many of you are wearing wool right now?
Not sure.
Okay, so sheep and goat are a niche market. They're small, but we still have an impact here. And so my students had to look at, okay, how can we do this? So again, applying another way. How are you going to make money and have a production product, so something that you can sell? So they problem solved. Okay, decision-making confidence, we've already kind of hit on the home of this. And then application to course concepts. Okay, so measuring student learning. And this did not save, so I'm just going to talk through this. Some learning outcomes. So I wanted to measure how the students felt about this. Okay. And so some things that I was able to do is I've given them a survey. Not all of them have done it yet, but I'm trying to get them to do it. And it's more of like, what's your confidence level on a matrix? Some of the ideas that I've gotten back have been, this course has increased my confidence. Okay, thank you for providing opportunities for me to feel more confident giving a vaccine and understand the difference between when you give it underneath the skin or when you give it in the muscle, and why we have to do boosters. Okay? I learned the most in this class. It challenged me, and I appreciate that. So again, I'm just going to kind of wrap up so that we have time to kind of stay on schedule. But one thing that I want us to kind of understand and think about is experiential learning helps bridge the gap between theory and practice through hands-on engagement and real-world career readiness. Again, the thing that we got to think about, and this was the hardest thing that I had to deal with, and I think instructors do as well, is how do you structure it? Right, like I said, I mentioned my class, my reproductive physiology class is 180 students. My sheep and goat production class, I have 60 students in it. So how do I make it where I'm not stressed out on the grading aspect? So some things that I do, I structure it. I create a transparent assignment sheet for each thing or each step that I do. So I outline what I expect of my students, and I give them the grading rubric ahead of time. And I have them say, okay, what is unclear? What things need to be clarified? And then they know going in, this is what's expected of me. And then they work from there. I've also used personalities to help them get into their group settings as far as their capstones. And that's helped out a lot, because when students are in groups of friends, only one friend does the work. But when we put them in groups of personalities, then they can navigate to, okay, I'm good at making a business mind. I'm business minded, so let me help out with this model. You're creative. Let's think about what we're going to sell. Okay. So with that, I am going to kind of wrap up and open the floor for questions. How could this look like in your class? What is something that you could do from an experiential learning standpoint? I know it's quick, fast, and a hurry, but thank you.
I have a question for how you're doing it in your class.
Yeah.
Or so. So when you got groups that are that big, are you assigning them different projects and having each one of them creating groups, subgroups inside the class to do that?
Mm-hmm. So when I do the scaffolding aspect of it, so in fall, I had the students in my reproductive physiology class, I said, you've got to go out and check the pastures for the breeding 6 times during this time period. There's going to be a group of you that are out there. So you all, up to 10 students out there. And so they would go in a group, they would check in, they'd write it down on a clipboard that's out there at the pens, have to submit a picture of them actually being there and upload it to Canvas. So those are low stakes. And then I had them do a reflection afterwards. Now in my smaller class, I say smaller, but in my 60 student class, they have lab groups. And so again, I gave them, you're required to do this for at least 5 times. Anything above the 5 different checks is going to be extra credit. And they eat up the extra credit like nobody's business. Because my exams for that higher level class is more higher order thinking. I ask them applied questions, so they kind of stub their toe, but they can make it up when they do the hands-on learning aspect. So, and then I break that down into smaller things like, all right, this lab, we're going to go out and we're going to vaccinate. This lab, we're going to go out and we're going to go dock tails. We're going to grab some fecal samples and see, do we actually need to deworm these females or not? And that was a learning experience of itself, because when we did that, one of the females was like very sick and she wasn't showing anything. And so the students got to see, oh, if I do this, then I can intentionally use pharmaceuticals versus vaccinating and deworming everybody. So we're saving money, but we're also understanding the physiology. So.
Is there any time where the students grade each other or give reflection back on the...
So in their capstone project, they do, I give them 3 opportunities, because again, beginning of the project, middle of the project, and end of the project, they have a self-reflection, they have a peer reflection, and then when they go in for their presentation, all the students will get a rubric to grade their peers and write down questions, because again, I've noticed since my time here at Tarleton, not all the students like to ask questions out loud. And so they've got to write down questions that they want to ask their peers on that as well. And that'll all go into their grade.
Thanks.
Anything else? Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.